Call the meeting to order. Roll call.
Gussley.
Here.
Hare.
Here.
Herman.
Here.
Hoffman.
Here.
Newhouse.
Here.
Yarko. You have a quorum.
Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Tonight we have a public hearing on the exchange of real estate property between the Village of Morton and Sam Parrott. So I am opening the public hearing for any public input that you might have. Okay. In short, the exchange will be an exchange of the firehouse, the police station, the house next to the police station that the village owns. This will be an exchange of property that Mr. Parrott owns, which is property, some of the property between Adams Street, Washington Street, Main Street, and Plum. The intended use of this property, if the trade is finalized, is for a parking area for downtown and for the plaza. In addition to this, as a part of this agreement, the Village of Morton will lease the firehouse for 5 years, up to 5 years. And at that time, the firehouse will be vacated. And it is the intent of this board to be building a new or a second firehouse, nowhere close to the extent of the one that was built a few years ago. We are looking at various options of paying for that new firehouse. One of the options, and most likely option, is an extension of the line of credit that we have for the present firehouse, trying to stay within the same dollar amount per month of payment. Is there anything else, Mr. Laudermilk?
I believe you summed it up.
Okay. I'm sorry?
$50,000 payment.
Oh, and also there'll be a $50,000 payment from Mr. Parrott to the village.
I think the citizens need to know that the amounts of the cost of the property, the numbers, is myself and Mr. Laudermilk put these numbers together. We presented it to Mr. Parrott. He agreed to it, and that was that. We had found out that he was interested in the firehouse. I had spoke to Craig, and I informed you that maybe we could, instead of selling it, we could just trade for some property. So it's the amount of 3 houses that he has that we're getting in and knocking them down. We're going to gain around 45 parking spots, which if to go do a parking spot, it's usually around $10,000. So to get parking is expensive. So the existing building is too small. The fire trucks barely fit in. We've outgrown it. The new station, just to expand upon what you said, would probably just be 2 or 3 bays for ambulance and a fire engine. We have that property bought and paid for in Queenswood, so there would be no expense for property. Also, the fire station, police station is kind of unique in trying to sell it to someone, because the minute you walk out the back door of the firehouse, you're on the city property. So Mr. Parrott we were fortunate, I guess, as a community, that what we needed for parking, Mr. Parrott owned all the pieces. What we had, Mr. Parrott wanted. So we were lucky we could work with one owner. But the fire station, when you walk out the back door, you're on city property. He cannot use any of the alley for parking or anything, because that alley has to be there for the water treatment plant, for our deliveries and that. Also, we have an antenna in that alley, and then also in the agreement is in the basement we have the weather people and the auxiliary police. And so if he wants to do anything with the police station, which is vacant, he has to leave us a hallway or an access lockable to that basement for 5 years. So to find a person that would be agreeable to all this was, I believe, a unique situation. And he's agreeable to all that. So we have total use of the building. He has the expense of the taxes and all major expenses. We just have minor upkeep of the building. He has to keep the furnace going, so if it conks out, that's his. So the major bills, roof and that is on the owner. How we came up with the lease agreement, we worked with Justin Farrell, a real estate agent, to come up with a modest amount of what a square footage price would be to rent that space. And we reduced that some and came up with a fair number, we thought, since we don't expect any of us to spend too much money for the next 5 years. Then and that's what we based the lease on. So we have a couple houses. We traded them even up. We had the police station appraised. Like I said, it's a unique building. It's in good enough shape for us for 5 years, but we really need a better facility for the paramedics. The sleeping quarters, the bathrooms are obsolete, and the fire engine just drive by and you only have a few inches above. And one of the reasons we wanted a new fire station before, we've been concerned with the volunteers. As the engines pull out, somebody would get caught between the trucks and pulled under. So it's time to move on. He has a use for it, and I think it's better that private development redoes those buildings downtown than the citizens. So I feel we got a good price for the building, and in trade we acquired all the ground and land we needed. And I'm going to ask Mr. Laudermilk just to speak a little bit on the parking lot, the reasons we got those three and what we intend to do with that.
Before you do that, just question, dollar volumes are even up, correct?
Dollar volumes are even up once Sam writes us a check for $50,000. So we're trading the fire station and one house for the equivalent really of 3 houses, the land behind Becky Grimm's where there was 2 houses, another house, and $50,000. And getting to lease the fire station for 5 years, up to 5 years. We have to be out of it in 5 years.
To clarify, the 3 houses, those houses on Sam's property are no longer there, just the one house.
Just the one, 2 of them are gone.
Yeah, he's already demolished those. As far as the parking lot, the house at 128 West Adams, and then the sliver of land between Adams and Washington is going to allow us to put a parking lot in that's a lot of our downtown parking is one-way, diagonal parking, hard to navigate through. This will be a new parking lot, 2-way traffic, easy to navigate through, easy to use, and hopefully we can tie it together. I shouldn't say hopefully, we are going to tie it together to the plaza, so there will be easy access for parking for that and other downtown events. And some of the stuff Sam's doing too is sitting right in the middle of everything going on downtown. So I think this is a unique situation, like Jeff said, that benefits both parties.
And in dealing with the trade, you have to be fair. It has to work for both sides. And like I said, me and Mr. Laudermilk came up with those numbers. The interesting thing about the parking lot that we're trying to improve, that parking lot's always been kind of off to the shoulder because there's houses and a lot of grass there. So now we're going to bring it right behind Grimm Interiors. So we're going to get that parking lot a lot closer, and like I say, about 44 parking spots. So I think even for the existing businesses and the people that work at those businesses will be able to park farther away from their offices, where the customers will now be able to park much closer. So I think in all fairness, I think it's a very good deal for the citizens. And that's all I have, Your Honor.
Does the board have any further questions?
In regard to the parking lots, there were some easements that were straightened out as part of that process then?
Yeah, where Mr. Grimm has knocked down the duplex for the Wanless, the old Wanless duplex, I call it, across from the fire station, police station there at the corner of Plum and Jefferson. He is going to put in a...
Mr. Parrott, not Mr. Grimm.
Mr. Parrott. Mr. Parrott is going to, that's his property, he's going to do with it what he wants, build something or leave it grass at the time being, but he intends on putting about a 60-foot wide parking lot behind there, a private parking lot that would be connected to ours, and he has agreed to give us, he's going to work with Craig for the exit and entrance of that parking lot, and he's agreed to give us an easement So no day in the future can anybody put a chain across it, so we can get in and out. So we've had a parking lot issue like that before when somebody connects it to ours and that they can actually block them off, and he will not do that, and he's agreed to do that. But he intends on doing it, using that for his employees for the time being.
Any other questions of the board? Now that we've given a little more information to the audience, is there questions of the audience? Would you like to give a presentation to the public hearing? Hearing none, in that case, I'll close the public hearing and we'll move to the next item on the agenda, which is another exciting addition to tonight's agenda. We have Bruce Brown from Farmsworth Group, and he's going to give us an update on the downtown plaza.
Good evening. I handed out to you before we all sat down a copy of the current design book, design manual for the plaza, and a copy of the current cost estimate that we're using for the project as well. I'm not going to go through the estimate line by line, but I'll go through and give you a few highlights along the way, and then we'll field any questions that you want to discuss later. As you can see, right now we have the total project budget in current year dollars at just shy of $2.5 million. We had said from the very beginning we were probably somewhere in the $2 to $3 million range with some of the initial programming. So I think we've held to that fairly closely where we originally thought we would be at. Of the 13, if you look at the front page of the estimate, there are 13 line items. As we work through those, just some highlights of those. Site demolition includes the removal of Washington Street between Main and First. Item 2, the utility services would be new utilities coming into the site. Site work is, as you've seen before, general grading and stormwater systems. Number 4 is buildings, and I will address some next step comments at the end. What is nice about our current design, we've had some great conversations with Trustee Kaufman and with Craig as well about the buildings. We have the flexibility. The original design had one restroom building and one mechanical building to house our fountain work. The fountain company that we're working with actually will provide all of our mechanicals in an underground vault if we want that option, so we could actually turn the second building into a restroom building if we chose to, so we could increase restrooms over what we currently show in the original master plan along the way. Those are items that would need to be flushed out before final documents are finished. The Veterans Memorial stays as it is with the service columns centered on the American flag. There will be 3 different types of granite pavers for sale for citizens in there. It'll be a 12 by 12, an 8 by 8, and a 4 by 8 granite paver available within that area. And then there'll be the memorial itself, which will house the names of those that have fallen for Morton over the years. The plaza itself will consist of the water feature, our entry gateway, the shade shelters that we have around the side, seat walls, movable tables and chairs. The tables will be built in such a way that they can be gaming tables. We had one gentleman at the Pumpkin Festival, just great idea. Why can't the tops be made to play checkers or chess? And it's a very easy thing to do. So we'll have all that incorporated. We've done a preliminary design on item number 7 for lighting. We'll be specifying LED lights to try to minimize maintenance for this overall. That'll include pedestrian lights. It'll also include up lights for the flags, and it won't be just one light on a flag. It'll be 3 lights on a flag, so that no matter which way the wind moves, we're not violating what Congress says to be able to see the flag from the curb when you step out of your car. Our site furniture, we have actually 3 manufacturers that we're working through to pick from along the way. That'll be finalized during construction documents. We have a generous amount of landscape in there so that the plaza looks somewhat finished the day that it's put out to the public. And then, of course, item 11, which was sort of debated back and forth at the Pumpkin Festival and since then, is the entertainment area, and we have that currently in the project because in further discussions, we determined that was the best use of space at this particular time. Going through all those items, we also then have item 12, which is our general conditions, which is contractor costs for staking, layout, job trailers, and things of that nature. Then item 13 is our design contingency. Since we are still in the schematic design and early design development phases, we don't know every last little nut and bolt of this, so we left a design contingency in there to help cover that as we move into construction documents. The goal would be for that contingency to come down and be used to cover whatever we've missed in other design elements and to eliminate that altogether when you get to the end of construction documents. But that gives us something to rest on along the way. As far as where we are today, Jennifer will come up in a few minutes. We'll talk about fundraising. You'll still need to finalize the details of the building. We have all this drawn in CAD. Craig and I were talking about this the other day. We have enough drawings. You could go out there right now and lay it out, but we couldn't give you all the elevations and all the details to go with it. So the detailing of the project would be left to be worked out at this time. It'll be important to understand that there's still room for input here from the public. We've not picked all the final materials. We've made suggestions on everything. We feel pretty comfortable with where it's going, but there's still options for that. We still have the option that we can kick back and forth on the mechanical building versus the restroom building and what is in the best interest of the city over time. Both of those are worked into the budget as it sits now. There'll be final furniture selections, there'll be color selections to make along the way, and final details and materials. The village will have to come to grips with a delivery method for this project, whether it'll be a design, bid, build type, or a construction manager type. There are two or three different delivery methods, and we'll be glad to work with Craig to help them look at all three of those to see how they work. And somebody beat us to it over the weekend in email, but the notion of maintenance came up. This is the appropriate time in the design sequence to begin to talk about maintenance. We know enough about the design, enough about the basic materials that it would be easy to start predicting what those needs are, and we can certainly help. We've done that with other projects over time. Create a maintenance calendar, create a maintenance schedule, and you can start putting some hard numbers to that and making your decisions for down the road how you plan to maintain this facility over time. So in a nutshell, that's where we're at. The design book is a living document. It will continue to change as decisions are made and more is known about the project. It changes just about every week in my office as we research and find things along the way, and we will date it and keep it current with the village. But that is the backbone of the project at this point in time. I'm available to answer any questions if you have any right now.
Bruce?
Yes, sir.
You said a maintenance schedule could be available?
This is the appropriate time, and I would certainly be glad. We just went through this exercise with the city of Peoria. If you've been watching the news, they just let contracts for the Washington Street and the Warehouse District streetscape renewals, and the city of Peoria is going through the same issue. They waited a little bit longer, but we basically have a spreadsheet of months and days across the top and all the maintenance items down the bottom, and we start to list out, how often do you need to pick up garbage? Is that a once a week or a once a day type of scenario? How often do you need to prune the trees? How often do you need a fertilizer? You have a startup and shutdown of an irrigation system. Somebody's going to have to check lighting. You start to account for all those little items along the way, and then you can start to make a decision about whether the village wants to take that on, whether you want to hire that out. There's been discussions about the park district. There's a lot of options. But if you start doing that now while we're still in the design process, it'll give you a lot more flexibility to work those costs out. And we can even make changes to materials if some materials they might be a little more expensive, but maybe they're easier to take care of.
Thank you. And I totally agree. That's why I asked the question. I think it'd be really important for us to have that piece of the puzzle as we're getting really close here to finalizing things. And that certainly will enter into some of our decision making. I think we're looking at the initial cost now, but as we all know, we're looking at long-term investment as well with just the maintenance and operations of it, and want to make sure it's done right. And I think it'll be very helpful if we had that cost on the front end of things as we finalize the final design.
We'll be glad to help provide the backbone of some of that information and work with Craig on that to get that at least in a rough format so that you can start to study that and make decisions about that. Are there any other questions about the plaza itself? We are always available if you do to call, stop in. I live in Morton. I'll stop on the way home. It's a good reason to get out of work early and come home. So, all right. We're going to let Jennifer speak just briefly to the fundraising efforts then. Thank you very much.
Good evening. It's been such a pleasure to work on this project on behalf of the Morton Economic Development Council. We have a great team that's been working with Bruce. We want to thank the Farnsworth Group for all of their expertise and time spent on the project. And what I just wanted to mention tonight is we have a group, a subcommittee of the downtown development team that has begun to look at opportunities for private fundraising to help with the cost of the plaza. And we have a plan put together. We are hopeful that we can raise about 50% of the project privately. We do have a plan put together to move forward with that if the village would like us to through the Morton Economic Development Council. And if we are going to go that path, we would recommend that the village establish a fund with the Morton Community Foundation. And I've talked with Scott Witzig there, and they would be happy to work with us to establish a fund to accept those private donations. In addition, next week we'll be meeting with the folks at the Farnsworth Group that specialize in grants. And there are some grant opportunities that we can apply for, including a DNR grant similar to the one that the pool received. I believe they received about $500,000 from that grant for the pool. Now, certainly with the state of Illinois, as we all know, nothing is a given. We want to be very careful and reasonable in what our expectations are in terms of grants, but we certainly would encourage the village to pursue those grants through the recommendations of the Farnsworth Group. If we are going to pursue the DNR grant, there is a hard deadline for that, and that is June. And they only do that once a year. So if we want to apply for that grant, we would need all of the funds for the project committed by June. If you are accepted, if your project is into consideration, you're notified in September. You go and you do a mini presentation, and then in January you are notified whether you actually receive the grant funds. So that is the timeline. If we want to hit June of this year, obviously we have a fairly short amount of time to secure the funds for the project. So we would want to move forward as quickly as we can in terms of starting fundraising. Obviously, if we don't want to pursue that grant, or if we need to wait, we could wait a whole year. However, that timeline then would mean that we wouldn't know if we received that grant then until January of 2015 versus 2014. So, and I'm happy also to answer any questions.
Any questions? Would like to point out any money that the village would pay for this project. At the present time, we have the business district fund that is totally separate from our general fund, and the business district fund would be used for offset of any expenses that relate to this project. I can't tell you that there may not be some general fund money somewhere, but the vast majority of the money would be coming from the business district fund.
I have some questions in that regard and the timeline kind of in general. If we apply for the grant, and I think you've answered this, but just to clarify, $500,000 is the maximum amount. Are there smaller increments that we could be awarded, or how does that work?
I'm going to learn a lot more next week when I meet with the Farnsworth Group and their grant writers. Okay. I believe $500,000 is the maximum. I don't know, Bruce, do you know that?
I think it's either 400 or 500. They do occasionally, there are some smaller amounts, but they usually get it out in bigger chunks.
So the likelihood, if you were to receive a grant, it would be $400,000 to $500,000, not 5,000 or something like that. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yes, and I do believe the grant writers at the Farnsworth Group also have 2 other grants they'd like us to consider that they think this might be a good match for. And so we're going to learn about that next week as well, and what the timelines are for those, and whether we feel that they're a good match to apply for.
Well, I appreciate the expertise that Farnsworth has in grant writing, because I think that is a key, is having the right people who've done this before. I guess I just want to mention that when we were building our police station, we were awarded a grant, but we never did receive that grant because the governor froze the funds. So just when we're dealing with the state of Illinois, we
Yes.
have to be aware of that possibility also. We did everything we could to actually get what was promised to us, but we did not.
I think that governor's in jail. Is it related to that?
Well, I'd like to take credit for that. Not really, not really. And then, I guess my other question is, we have to have our plan in place and the funding in place before we apply. So my question then would be, if, because we've told people we were going to phase this in and, you know, maybe over a multi-year thing as monies were available in the business district fund, et cetera, could the plan be altered from what we submit for the grant if necessary?
I'm going to have to leave that to Bruce to answer.
Okay.
That's a good question. I'm not 100% sure. I think the plan you take in is the grant we're talking about currently is with the DNR.
Okay.
So they have a little bit more flexibility outside the governor's office, because it's the
Right.
It's the OSLAP grant. And most people, or most agencies have been afraid to touch that one, because that one's been around for quite a while.
Okay.
It'll probably be one of the last ones to go with all those.
Okay.
But I think what you submit is what they expect to see, because there is some follow-up, there's some paperwork with it. They don't just hand it to you, you know, it's a reimbursable type of grant usually. And then there's some years of follow-up, you submit a little bit of paperwork that you've done, what you said it would do.
So you're accountable basically throughout the process for, if they're going to give you this money, this is the plan that they expect to see.
And one of the reasons this grant has stayed is because they're forcing you to raise money first rather than them kicking in first and then you try to follow along. So, you know, they're looking at projects that have, you know, several park districts or whatever that don't have the funding, you know, they're not even going to try, they leave those people out. Those that really have the determination and the financial wherewithal is what they're looking for.
It's a pretty aggressive timeline for the fundraising to get.
It is. It is. We have, I think, a good plan. We have a wonderful project that I think a lot of people are very excited for in terms of the impact it could have for the citizens of Morton. And so, you know, obviously, we would do our very best if you wanted to shoot for this June to, with our downtown development team and the people involved in our organization to work on securing those pledges and commitments with the Morton Community Foundation Fund to make that June timeline. But we would need every single day to do that.
I guess in regard to the timeline, I'd kind of like to see what Mr. Loudermilk's thoughts would be on the village's part of this process.
Well, I think the biggest thing is what Bruce mentioned was the delivery method, which we haven't really discussed yet, meaning how are we going to proceed with final design, and then construction is going to take some time to go through that process. But that's something I've been working with Bruce on.
I was going to say to that point, I was going to ask this just to confirm it, but typically with the DNR or any other state grants, your hands are tied from incurring any cost until the awarding of that grant. So we're not talking about doing anything this next year, this current year.
As far as construction.
Yeah, any improvements, right? Even if we were, can you break out, I think to Ginger's point, maybe if I understood what you're asking, can you break out portions of it in terms of a phase and do that portion of it in more of a piecemeal fashion, but without risking
The grant.
the state funds.
I think in Craig, you can probably talk to this. I think that if we were going to go for this cycle, we would try to secure the dollars by June and submit the grant. And then between June and January, when we find out about the grant, the work would be with Craig and the Farnsworth group or whichever group is going to do those final building drawings and the preparation for construction during that time, which they probably, I think, Craig, you'd said 4 or 5 months would be needed for that
That'd be a good estimate, yeah.
period of time anyway, so those drawings would need to be finalized. And I guess the idea then would be in January, we would find out about the grant and then move forward with construction in the spring of 2014 if, we were able to stand that timeline. So I don't know that there's much we could do ahead of that because of the building drawings that still need to be done and some of the other things that Craig would need to have finished.
I'll ask the question of the grant writers, because being that it's a DNR OSLAD grant, they're not just going to give you a blanket, whatever their maximum amount is for the whole park. They're looking for specific pieces. And really the two that they are going to like the most from this are the playground areas. And so, our thought was we're going to get those playgrounds into that grant. That's the piece that they're really focused on. Maybe the restroom building, because that's a support piece to that. So I will ask, if for whatever reason we wanted to break this up, and that had to go into a later grant cycle or something along that line, could we do with that?
And just to ask that question too, is it, if you apply for a grant, if we chose, with Farnsworth Group that the DNR grant's the one you want, does that then eliminate you from looking at some of these other grants, or how's that going to play into it?
You still have
So we can, okay.
Because the DNR grant is it won't pay for the water features, it's not going to pay for the flags. Each grant has different pieces that it's looking for to satisfy.
Question.
So at what point would we be needing money, if we were to apply in this grant cycle? At what point would we be needing money from the business district fund? When would we begin to get bills or need that money?
There would be some expense for the building drawings.
Yep.
And so that would probably occur beginning this summer, Craig?
I think your main question is the 2.5 million. When do we have to come up with the portion from the business
Right, because
district,
I
which
mean,
would be
and how many
committed by June, right?
It would be pledged by June. Construction, however, would be in the spring of 2014 in the timeline we're talking about. So the nice thing about that on the private sector fundraising is it gives us the ability to allow businesses and families that want to donate to the project to decide that if they want to contribute those dollars in 2013 or in 2014, which is really advantageous for a lot of groups, a lot of companies and families. Or they can do part of it in 2013 and part of it in 2014 if that's better for them as well. So it's kind of an advantage to the timeline, is it gives them the ability to do that.
I would like to offer a suggestion, Ginger, when it comes to the point of your question, the time. I thought about this a great deal, and I know that this board is not overly thrilled about borrowing money. At least we haven't been. We've only done it a few times since 1877. But there is the possibility of borrowing money for this and paying that off from the business district, or a portion of the business district money. The other option, which I think is a better option, is to borrow the money from our reserve fund that we have. And that way, we're not paying interest to some organization. And I'll need to check with the attorney to see with the business district if it's possible to, business district rules, if it's possible to pay that money back to the general fund, plus an equivalent interest amount that we would not have received from the bank having that money invested. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do. I guess I'd like to see what fund that would come from and if it would not make us vulnerable in any way.
It would come from the general fund reserve. And we can ask Wendy to, if she'd be kind enough over the next couple of weeks, to give us what that amortization of that would be over that time period. The other thing that I would like to offer is there'd be a point of time that we need to take some action of some sort here. I'm going to be asking Wendy and Bruce and Jennifer to get with our attorney and determine what the timelines on any action that we need and what those resolutions would be, so that process can also start.
I would like for Craig to have an active role in that. I'm not sure if
certainly
you
may.
mentioned his name, but I think he's going to be a key person in regard to the village's, representing the village as far as that part of the timeline, so.
Yeah. And my main goal is that this thing's built correct, that it'll last a long time. So while we have probably what I would consider an expedited schedule, that's where my concern comes in, is that we can build something that'll last a long time and not rush it or spend unnecessary dollars on overtime to squeeze it into a certain time frame. That's where my concerns would be.
But we've had a lengthy meeting already on the maintenance of it, excuse me, and how we're going to build parts of it to address some of those costs. Also, the business district collects about $30,000 a month, so it gives the trustees an idea how much.
Yeah, you've got you've already got 2 years you can roll into it, right? So that's $720,000 that you would already put as a down payment toward it. So I think it's not as the 2.5 isn't as scary.
You can't use all of that because we do have some things designated.
Sure.
But
That's
you
what I
could
was
do a
gonna
vast
ask.
majority of it.
Right, but a lot of it you can, so you're
But there's a
still-
lot of money in it, in the fund already right now.
But that was my question. The business district fund will still continue with its other components?
We have every year $50,000 put aside for the facade grant.
Right, and that will continue.
And
That's designated.
Correct, and $50,000 for revolving loan fund. Although the revolving loan fund, we have not had an applicant yet for that fund. So the village obviously would want to consider whether there needs to be another $50,000 each year put into that. That would be your choice, since we haven't had anybody apply for that. The facade grant has been very, very popular, and I think we'll have another large group this year in terms of applications for that fund. So we certainly would encourage you to protect that.
I think the revolving loan account, you could just leave it at the $50,000 for a couple of years while you're doing this project, and then look after that to see if anybody's, just to keep putting money in there and nobody needs it to bring business to town. It's really not serving the purpose.
Any other questions? So we will be bringing the appropriate action for this board at the appropriate time. And Wendy, if you'd be kind enough to give the board plenty of head start on that, not prior to the agenda going out, but so that they can ask questions of you or our attorney.
Yeah, Jennifer asked me to...
Wait a minute.
Yes, sir. No. Jennifer asked me to speak on...
Oh, she asked you.
Yes, sir. Larry Steinling, American Legion Senior Vice Commander, member of the 8-man committee for the Veterans Memorial, and part of the subgroup that's been working on this committee. I just want to point out that this project, in regards to the Veterans Memorial, has the full backing of the combined membership of the American Legion and the VFW. And I want to point out one thing. When we first talked about a Veterans Memorial, the price tag was $500,000. It has shrunk thanks to the efforts of Farnsworth and Bruce to $213. The committee that's been working on the plaza is not spending money without considering better options. So, yeah, the 2.5 million sounds like a lot, but it could have been a heck of a lot higher without the diligence of several people on the committee. So once again, the American Legion and the VFW and the 8-man committee that consists of American Legion members, Sons of the Legion members, and VFW members are fully behind this project. Not just the memorial, but the project as a whole.
Thank you, Larry. I'm glad I let you talk.
I have a question for Larry. Larry, you have started some fundraising already?
Yes.
Okay, and that fits nicely into what's been presented here tonight?
Yes.
In regard to the sizes of the...
The idea originally was for the 8-man committee to raise the $500,000 that we were going to need. But once we got integrated into the plaza, it was determined that it would be best for all the funds to be commingled to pay for the plaza as a whole, rather than say, well, we raised our part, now why haven't you raised your part? We can't do ours until you get yours done. So it's all commingled now.
Okay.
And the money that is in the Community Foundation earmarked for the Veterans Memorial will go into the fund earmarked for the downtown plaza.
Very good.
Is that correct, Jen?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Larry. So I think one of the first pieces of action that hopefully can be done within the next 2 weeks is the whatever resolution it takes to open an account with the Community Foundation. So we can get that started. Any other questions or comments? Very exciting, people. Very, very exciting. I think tonight the community can see that things are still moving on this. I know the grass isn't growing very quickly on that property right now, but it's definitely growing in this room, so great job.
I think Bruce has done I should have said this earlier, you've done a fantastic job of incorporating in the comments that were received, during the Pumpkin Festival and from other input, our input and other public input, and, have adjusted things and looked for ways to save, and appreciate your efforts.
And find more restrooms.
We'll talk about that.
I can see there are naming rights here. Kaufman's John. So put your 10 grand in.
All kidding aside, the video that we did for the Pumpkin Festival, we did have a version with his name above one of the buildings. We decided to not.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to public comments. Do we have any comments from the public? Hearing none, we'll move to the request for removal of items from the consent agenda. The consent agenda tonight is approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of January 7th, 2013. Approval of the bills. There are no ordinances. Resolutions tonight, resolution number 24-12, a resolution regarding release of executive session minutes. At this point in time, we do not have any minutes to release. Second item is resolution number 25- whatever. Got two 12s there, don't we?
24 and 25.
Oh, 20, there it is. It was blurred. All right, 25-5-12, a resolution authorizing the vacation of utility easement and trails of Timber Oak subdivision. This is a situation where three lots are being combined, 3 lots being combined into 2 lots, and the easement is no longer needed. Then under other business, we have approval of purchase of 3 police vehicles from Bob Graham Chevrolet in the amount of $63,435. I commend the Grimm organization for coming in below the state bid. Not by much, but they did come in below, and so we're very pleased that we're able to buy from in town. So if you would pass that on to them for us. Thank you. Are there any items that I've listed that you would like to place under action item 8, consideration of items removed from the consent agenda? Hearing none, is there any items the board would like to move down? May I have a motion?
Move approval, Your Honor.
Second.
Any discussion?
Just that on the purchase of the police vehicles, at the bottom it says we'll have a summary of the previous 5 years in reverse. I don't have it in reverse. Is that just an oversight?
It's on the
I
packet.
think it's a separate.
Is it a separate sheet? Because I
I
couldn't
think
find it.
I saw something.
I thought I had it.
We have the end of the year mileage, but not the 5 years. So that's mileage.
That's the mileage.
Mileage. Okay. Can we have that for next meeting then?
Yes.
That's all.
Okay. Roll call.
Belsley.
Yes.
Hare.
Yes.
Furman.
Yes.
Kaufman.
Yes.
Newhouse.
Yes.
I only have one item tonight, ordinance number 12-23, an ordinance authorizing the execution of agreement for exchange of real estate with Sam Parrott. This is a recommendation of the mayor, the and the department heads. It does take a 6 positive votes to pass. So I will be voting tonight. May I have a motion?
So moved, Your Honor.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Hare.
Yes.
Furman.
Yes.
Kaufman.
Yes.
Newhouse.
Yes.
Belsley.
Yes.
Dirklinger.
Yes, and the motion passes. Any items from the village clerk?
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
Madam Treasurer Controller.
Tonight, I am asking approval to transfer $2,000 from the general fund, $4,000 from the water and the wastewater depreciation fund, and $12,000 from the stormwater depreciation fund to the capital projects fund.
I have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Furman.
Yes.
Kaufman.
Yes.
Newhouse.
Yes.
Belsley.
Yes.
Hare.
Yes.
Okay, Assistant Chief.
The only thing I have tonight is just that in the packet is the police department end of the year vehicle mileage report. And that's the only thing I have.
Okay, go ahead.
Comment on that, worth noting, Your Honor, that I think the police department is doing a laudable job of managing the vehicles. And there's a fairly long list and some fairly high mileage, and we're making good use of those assets. So, good work.
Thank you.
Is there anything you would like to add on to this, Mr. Belsley? This report?
I would echo those sentiments by Mr. Newhouse. No.
Okay, great. Every once in a while, I do get comment about the number of police cars that are in the back of the police station. And I have been told by 2 different police chiefs that those cars are rotated in the fleet, so that we're spreading the total miles over a larger number of cars, and we feel that that's the most efficient and effective way of doing that. On top of that, in times of needs, we have those cars available for emergency situations in which our volunteer officers can use those cars. And so even though they're sitting there, it's not the same cars sitting there all year long. They are rotated. So,
We went through this several years,
Yes.
looking at that, and looking at it, and looking at it. And the chief pretty well proved that it was best deal to buy them, trade them, and then we asked for this report. So there was some accountability for the mileage, and when we're trading some off, that we aren't trading them off with a lot of good in them yet. So that's why we've been asking for this report now for several years.
All right. Thank you. Counselor, do you have anything?
Nothing tonight.
Chief?
I included in your packet this time a summary of our total emergency responses for last calendar year. You'll note on the last page that we were up considerably for the year with 2,473 total emergency responses. That would be both fire and paramedic. And you see the breakdown of each type of response. You'll note there's lots and lots of categories. That is the standard category set for all fire departments. So it's not really something that we came up with, but that's how all departments report. So there are quite a few. But if you have any questions about that at any time, please feel free to ask.
The EMS calls are up significantly, aren't they?
Yeah, as has been the case in the last few years, we haven't seen a great number of fire call increases, but it's the emergency medical calls that continue to increase over time. That's been the same for about the last 5 or 6 years at least.
It's like it's within one of being exactly a 10% increase.
Yeah. Yep. And those are, I mean, we're pleased that we were able to deal with that relatively well. We still have a little bit of room in there before we start to panic that we have too many. So, we're good with that.
Does this report, it's kind of, has a lot of information in it, but I'm not sure that I couldn't find it. The number of times that we've had to request another community to, do you have an estimate of what that is?
It is roughly, if you notice in there's a column that's called third ambulance calls. As you remember, we staff 2 ambulances, so anything above that requires their ambulance.
Okay.
So that number stood at 56. And you'll also note below that is the 4, which is fourth ambulance calls. That's 4 simultaneous emergency medical calls. Okay. So the sum of those 2 numbers would be the total number of times.
So in the future, we really need to be looking at those 2 numbers as to a point in time that we are going to have to look at another ambulance.
We, just a small note there, recently, about 6 months ago, East Peoria made a change in their operations that most of the time places an ambulance at their Station 4, which you'll remember is Pinecrest and relatively close to Morton. That actually was an advantage for us when calling for another ambulance in that it gets here quicker. It's coming from a relatively close distance. So, just a little note there that it was a change that they made that benefited us.
Thank you. Mr. Laudermill.
In your packets tonight is the Public Works recap for the month of December. That's all I have tonight, Your Honor.
The gas leaks. It looks like basically we had 2 hazardous, potentially hazardous. We had 2 hazardous, and then we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 potentially hazardous leaks. So I know people get tired of me saying these things, but it is important. If you're getting headaches, anything like that, don't be afraid to call the village. We have people that will come and check your houses out. We'd rather spend that time than have anything happen to anyone. The same thing is true with the carbon monoxide. Please change your batteries. And how often should they change the piece of equipment itself, approximately?
For fire
for the smoke detectors, it's about every 10 years
Okay.
is what the manufacturers say. The carbon monoxide detectors tend to vary a little bit more than
Okay.
that, but almost always within the instructions that you receive with the unit, it gives you an idea. And oftentimes, they have an element in it that knows when it's going bad and will alert you to something like that.
Okay.
In the carbon monoxide, not so much in the smoke.
I'm impressed with you, Joe. You're the only male I know that reads instructions.
Yeah. We were able, since we were talking about those things, we were able to receive a grant of around $1,000 again this year from Walmart, which we use to continue our program that gives low-income people in Morton a smoke detector and a carbon monoxide detector. Most often where we see that delivered is really at the point of contact in an emergency, and we did that just today. There was a problem with a person's CO alarm. It went off, but had we left without giving them anything, they would have had no working smoke detector and no CO detector. We were able to go to our unit, open a new package, and give them one, so we don't leave them unprotected.
That's great.
I forgot one item that's in your packet. There's a packet in there that relates to basically it's part of our public awareness and safety program because we're a municipal gas company. So please read that. Basically, it's information about natural gas safety and kind of goes through some of the steps that we're taking to provide safe transportation of natural gas to facilities throughout the village.
I read over that. You and Mr. Stidman did a fantastic job. I should say probably Mr. Stidman and you.
Scott did a great job. Mr. Barkdahl also helped with that some too. So I give credit to him also.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Spangler, do you have anything tonight?
One item tonight, Your Honor. I just wanted to briefly touch on the, since we're going to be coming into a spring election time, the political sign ordinance. And just kind of as a rule of thumb, placement would be 10 foot behind the curb or at least behind a city sidewalk. So if you don't have a city sidewalk, get at least 10 foot back of curb, and then it will be on your property, not in the village right away. Size requirements are 4 square feet for residential and 32 square feet for a commercial or industrial property. And then they're supposed to come down 7 days after the election.
I think it's very important because looks like all the taxing bodies have extra people running for various positions that everyone involved in publicizing their candidates. If you forget from this notice, contact Mr. Spangler because we will take those signs down. And they will not be able to be used. Everyone has to follow our ordinance. And I have to tell you, 8 years ago, they spanked my hands because I put them inside the sidewalks in a couple of places, and I was notified. And
Thanks for letting me stay.
I'm sorry?
Thanks for letting me stay on the job.
Only because I like you. All right. Trustees, Mr. Belsley.
Nothing this evening, Your Honor.
Mr. Hare.
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
Mrs. Herman.
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
Mr. Kaufman.
Just one item. In your packet, I had the administration update the information for all the zoning boards and planning commission, board of trustees, and then all the personnel in all the departments. So just a nice update. We used to get that, the mayor used to do that annually. That's all I had, Your Honor.
You really want to start? I have nothing to lose.
The office was kind of surprised. I brought in a 1997 copy. I said it needs to be updated a little bit. So.
It's because you haven't read the latest one. Mr. Newhouse.
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
Thank you. We do not have a closed session tonight. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call. We don't do roll call. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same.